Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Mojo AI podcast. My name is Brian Camper. I'm the director of health and safety here at Safety Mojo. Today, we're going to be talking about fire prevention. We know on the job sites, one of the worst incidents we can have is a fire. They're hard to put out, they do a lot of damage, and they offer a lot of risk to human life. So, we're going to go over our top 10 tips on fire prevention. Starting it out, we're going to talk about keeping the fire prevention equipment in obvious places, right? Easy to access. Remember, it's not decor. It's not just having it on site that makes a difference. It's making sure that it's easily accessible. People know where it's at, that it can be reached from all areas of job site at any time. We'll actually put a red piece of plywood behind it, kind of like the wall behind me here. And that way people know there's the fire prevention equipment. The pillars running up to the ceiling, we'd paint those red. That way, no matter where you were in the warehouse, you could see there's our fire prevention equipment over there. Making sure that you test everything, right? And not only that you test the functionality of the alarms, but the people's responses, right? How they respond. Do they muster in the right area? Do they take it serious? Ease of accessibility to get to your fire equipment. Testing your alarms, testing your equipment. Our second tip is proper hazardous waste disposal, right? As we're working on these job sites, we get rags that are either oily rags, have some fuel on them, empty fuel containers, oil containers, whatever it may be. Make sure that we dispose of that stuff the right way. Piling it up over in the corner, disposing of it in the regular trash, that's not the right way. You want to have a hazardous waste disposal or either a flammable waste disposal center either on the work site or throughout the work site so that they're easily accessible for your workers. Your oily rags, your containers, all need to go in there. That way, they're not creating any vapors, they're not being exposed to any unmitigated sparks and potentially causing a fire. That one's a pretty simple one. It's basically good housekeeping. Make sure you're disposing of the stuff the right way. Tip 3, regular maintenance of equipment and machinery. Even though we don't think of that as a fire prevention measure, you got to remember the heavy equipment that we use on construction sites, on oil rig sites, really in any type of work. Most of it's, powered by either a combustible engine or, has some sort of oils and fluids within it. Those things leak, right? They leak, they build up in the engine bays, they cause, hazards on their own. Making sure that we go in, we're doing the proper maintenance, we're not allowing any bad wiring to spark around any of the combustible fluids within that equipment is going to be huge for us, right? Batteries, whether they're lithium batteries, whether they're your acid batteries, making sure that they're properly maintained is another key part to that, right? And this is something that you can assign to make sure that, you're avoiding any potential fire hazards. Tip number 4, proper storage of flammable material. Your fuels, your oils, your aerosol cans, liquid gas tanks, LPG tanks, propane tanks. All these need to be stored properly, right? You need to have a designated area for them. You need to use the proper storage facilities for them. And you need to make sure that any type of work that can compromise those, induce unmitigated sparks or open flame, are kept away from there, right? Look at your local, state, and federal regulations. Go off of OSHA. Look at your company's policies and procedures and make sure you're taking the overall work site into consideration when you're storing your material. Tip number 5, let's be honest, keeping a nice clean work site free of maybe loose timber, combustible material, rubbish is for your own safety. And it's not only your safety, it's the people working around you. If we leave material building up around us on the work site, whether it's a construction site, rig site, the chances of something sparking and causing a flame to that area, it increases dramatically. So getting rid of any used material, any rubbish, and getting that out of the worksite and into the proper disposal is key for fire prevention. Tip number 6, following your OSHA regulations. Making sure that you take your job site into consideration, your state regulations into consideration. What I would really recommend you to do is dive into your OSHA regulations. It will literally walk you through on how to set up your fire prevention. It's an underutilized resource. Definitely take the time to do it, as well as share that information with other people on your job site to make sure that fire prevention is spread throughout the site. Tip number 7, setting up and designing a smoking area. So smoking, has changed over the years. The days of everyone taking a smoke break and going out there and lighting up their Marlboros or their Camels has changed to People charging their vapes and taking vapes. Again, they still fall under the smoking areas. The reason we want to have a designated area goes back to that good housekeeping tip. We want to make sure that they're away from the work site. They're away from any combustible material, anything that might even produce vapors. After they're smoking, just as important as them being away from everything is what are they going to do with that butt, right? Putting in those butt cans, the ashtrays, that's key, and making sure to communicate to your smokers on site. Put it in the butt can, make sure it's extinguished. Out in the field, we would field dress them, smash them together, and if you have a little bottle of water, normally we toss them in the bottle of water, and that was kind of the butt can. This one is mostly common sense. Smoke away from the job site, anything that's combustible, make sure it stays clean and tidy. And you have to make sure a little bit of enforcement on that. Make sure that people are only smoking in that designated work area. Tip number 8, emergency response plan. Making sure that you have a good emergency response plan and that one that's understood by everyone on the site. And what I always like to do was I would put it right on the entry of the site as part of the orientation. Just as much as we talked about indicating where fire equipment is, we want to make sure people know what the path of escape is for a fire, right? You need to make sure you're highlighting your path of escape, right? Where firefighting equipment is, at what level are you fighting the fires, where the muster point is, right? Who's conducting roll call, and all those procedures. And it's really key to make sure any action plan that you have, that you test it. In the oil and gas industry, we're a little more stringent. On a rig per se, we would do it minimum once a month. We would have a full evacuation drill. On construction sites, the schedule can vary, but I would recommend at least once a month, especially with the high turnover that you have on construction sites. Make sure you get people into the right areas for the muster and for the head count, and make sure you test your plan. It's better to find a flaw in your plan during a drill than in real life, right? As you're doing your JSAs, your PTPs, or your JHAs, I challenge you to discuss fire prevention in those JHAs or your morning safety meetings. And that way you're readdressing them on a daily basis. And if something's changed, you're making those changes to your fire prevention plan. And number 10, keep the job site secure. This sounds like a massive gray area and a massive vague answer, but controlling your job site is key, right? And it's key to fire safety and fire prevention as well. Whether it's a tanker truck pulling in, a oiler truck, or even just individuals, you want to make sure that when those people come on your site, A, they belong there, and B, they know where the hazardous materials are stored, they know where firefighting equipment is. That way, outside people are not introducing additional hazards, right? By maybe smoking in the wrong area or leaving a truck running next to a pile of combustible material, right? That's stored there for a reason. Security can definitely be part of your fire prevention, but fire prevention ultimately ends with you having communication with your work crew, right? And taking into account all the different aspects of your job site, your job tasks that you have going on that job site, because they're going to change daily. As always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any suggestions for topics, we'd be great to take those up. Have a great day from Safety Mojo. Peace out. Stay safe.